is, our city faces a budgetary crisis, the outcome of which has been cuts to neighborhood services and across the board increase in fees. What is your view on the city's current fiscal position, and what steps would you take to help resolve the financial problems? And our first answer would be from Janet, please.
Well, the first thing that we need to do is to be more fiscally responsible and save more money. As I'm sure you all know, we have just filled a $483 million budget deficit in the city. The projections for next year go up to $712 million, and for the following year, something like $760 million. So these are very difficult times and difficult times facing us. In the city of San Francisco, we put aside, we have $25 million in reserve. That is less than 1% of our entire budget. The average city in the United States puts aside in their reserve 15%. So number one, we need to save more money. There has been a proposal at the Board of Supervisors that was passed that will increase that to almost 2%. But we need more money in reserve. So when these difficult economic times come, we have money. We don't have to have draconian layoffs. And we have money set aside for projects like infrastructure and technology where we are woefully behind. We will not solve our budget problem until we solve our economic problem. And so what that means is we need to make San Francisco a friendlier place to run our small businesses. I believe that the future of San Francisco, in terms of our economy, really is going to be biotech, life sciences, the digital media, and just regular IT. I'm really proud of what we're doing down in Mission Bay, where we should try and be out there promoting Mission Bay really as the biotech capital of the world. That is the future of San Francisco, along with our small businesses. So I would like to promote that and make sure that San Francisco has an economic plan. We need a plan for where this city is going in terms of our economy. And there have been proposals for 5-year economic plans that have never been passed by the Board of Supervisors, and I think that is absolutely imperative. And so I would advocate for having a long-term economic stability plan for San Francisco.
Thank you, Janet. Kat?
Our budget deficit is not fixed when we borrow $500 million in order to balance the budget. To me, borrowing doesn't count as balancing the budget. We service it with debt, and Moody's just gave us a negative rating, which means it's more and more expensive for us to borrow. We can't afford to keep it that way. We have a 29,000 public employee payroll. We have 800,000 people. We have about, almost 20,000 employees more than San Jose, and it has more people. I look at this and I say, we must cut payroll. Now, I'm sorry if that sounds really heartless. I don't mean it to be heartless, but we grew that payroll when times were great. We shared our prosperity and we shared our wealth. Now, times are tough and we have to cut back. 60% of our budget that's not dedicated, that means it doesn't go to the port or to the airport, is going towards pensions. We have to have pension reform. We have to look at everything. Our pension liability next year is going to be $700 million. It's unsustainable. We can't keep it that way. You know, Police Chief Gascon, he's a smart guy. He talked with the cops about this, and you know what? They gave concessions. They looked at the fact that maybe they need to raise the retirement age. They looked at the fact that maybe they need to contribute more to their pensions, and they did that. Muni operators don't contribute anything towards their pensions. They should. I think that we should ask everybody to pay a little bit more. That's what Obama told us when he was running for president, that we should all pay a little bit more. And I think it's better to pay a little bit more than to lose your job. So I don't see how we can possibly tax our way out of this situation. Even if the voters elected to pass every single prop measure that raises revenues on the ballot, we still won't fix the problem. It'll only bring about $1,100 million in revenue, and that ain't going to fix it.
Thank you, Kat. Mark?
So I think our city's financial problems are the #1 issue facing all of us as San Francisco residents. And I think it's exactly why we need someone with a business and finance background to come into office, and a big part of why I'm running. I think there are 3 things we need to do specifically. First of all, fix our budget process. We have a 2-year budget cycle right now in San Francisco, thanks to Proposition A in 2008, but I don't think that went far enough. With only a 2-year budget cycle, we signed big city contracts, 3, 5, 7 years long, that a lot of them are back-end loaded with automatic pay increases every single year. That is not sound financial planning, and we need to fix that. Second of all, we have to cut city spending. I agree, it's not an easy thing to do, but it's something we need to do. 6 years ago, our salaries and fringe benefits for San Francisco city employees totaled $2 billion 6 years ago. This past fiscal year, just 6 years later, on the same number of city employees, same headcount, the $2 billion in salaries and fringe benefits has gone to $3.5 billion. That's unsustainable as a city. I'm running for office because I want to create a San Francisco that has a sound financial future here in San Francisco. I believe we all want that, and I think it's critically important. So we need to make tough decisions. And lastly, getting back to what we were all talking about earlier, we need to invest in our small business community. I believe, without a doubt, it is the financial backbone of our city and what is ultimately going to get us out of the fiscal trough that we're in right now. Those biotech tax credits down in Mission Bay that Janet was alluding to, $300,000 up front in foregone tax revenue, already getting the city $7 million on the back end. This is no-brainer legislation, and Newsom went to the board in February, couldn't even get tax incentives for small businesses out of committee. That has got to stop, and we need to have people in San Francisco and in City Hall that focus on our small business community.
Thank you, Mark. Vilma, please.
You might not like what I will say, but this is my take on this issue. I had an idea that all of the higher paid officers and members of the Board of Supervisors, from the mayor down to the SFMTA manager of the Muni, I would like to give something more than 2% that they share with their salaries. I'd like to give back at least 50%. That might sound absurd, but that's what I would like to give back to San Francisco if I have the fortunate, the miracle to be able to win this race. And I'm on an income that I'm set for life. I'm retired. I'm a 100% advocate for having to be able to give back to San Francisco, and that's the way I'm thinking about it, and I will do it. I will give back for whatever I can instead of begging for money to raise money for my campaign, because I'm not asking a penny from anybody except your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Abraham, please.
Thank you. I have to echo a lot of what I've heard so far, and that is, a couple of years ago we had a 2-year budget cycle, we had 3-year budget projection, we had a 10-year capital plan. Those things showed some sort of financial stability, and we had a very favorable Moody's rating as a result, right? That made an awful lot of sense. And then we ended up with a lot of problems. In 2008, we lost a lot of money, and the boom days were over, and we had to start looking at some long-term problems, and we tried fixing them with short-term fixes. And Moody's said, no go. And so our bond rating went down, and so it's costing us a whole lot more to borrow money, and we are not taking the steps that we need to let go of folks. So yeah, we do need to reduce the number of people who are in the system, and we have to be so much more careful with the way that we set up the process. Right now, the mayor can put us into these long-term projects, but supervisors aren't going to have an awful lot to do about that because they're not going to be able to deal with those contracts, and then we're going to have to end up trying to pay for them over the long haul. We have to deal with some very, very simple structural problems that we can from the Board of Supervisors. We need to, aside from fixing Muni, we need to get into some very serious pension reform right now. Please read the arguments in favor of Proposition B. We need to deal with Muni reform. We really do. Please read the arguments in favor of Proposition G. We need to start working with our nonprofits so that we stop paying multiple different nonprofits over trying to solve the same problem from different angles. We have to streamline the process. But more importantly, a supervisor is going to need to know how this got this way. A supervisor is going to have to be able to understand why this budget looks this way and where it can be cut, because it's not going to be possible to march in there as the sole supervisor from District 2 and change it in one fell swoop.
Thank you. Thank you. Barbara, please.
Abraham Simmons is my number 2 choice for supervisor. Great choice. Now, first of all, let's start with budget deficits suck. We're not going to do that. Moody's will hop all over us. But, you know, not going to happen here. Wouldn't be prudent. Would not be prudent. So we're going to chop from the top, and the first person to take a salary cut is the person who's going to ask other people to take salary cuts. Now, I have committed, prior to coming here a long time ago, that my first official act, now I may vote for other things other people propose, but the first thing I'm going to propose is a 10% cut in the salaries of supervisors. That means I cut my salary first. And I'm going to want the mayor's salary cut by 15. Now, if I'm going to take a 10% cut in my salary, you don't think I'm going to go after other elected officials to take a little hit on their salary? Yes, I am. Now, I would like to see which of these people here are going to back me on my proposal of a 10% cut of supervisor salaries. Everyone here that's a supervisor,
I will.
10% cut, raise your hand.
I'll take a 95% cut.
Okay, so we got 10% cut. Riley, Mr. Simmons?
I have to ask my wife. When I left private practice and started on this public interest nonsense, that was 12 years ago. What do you think, huh? Are you for it? You can do it. We can do it. Yes, we're done.
I did ask my wife as well. How are we doing, honey?
Okay. So, next thing to talk about.
In my case, I don't have
is
to
how
ask
to
anybody.
Hey, look at that. I'm not surprised I already got something done. Okay. So, now, next thing we'll talk to you again is about prostitution. Now, if I talk to you about prostitution, I can talk to you about anything. Now, if I'm going to sell prostitutes business licenses, come on.
Sorry about that. Ran out of time. The next question.